in, don't sit in the back, come to the front. We're not going to fight. Welcome to this interactive conversation between yourselves, Samuel here and Andrew to my left and Samuel to my right. We are here talking about parking and EV charging. And I will be here as your moderator, the person on the chat, and the person letting you know that this will be recorded. So for those people who'd like to share it, or if you want to stay for some of it, we'll send out the video recording to everyone who registered. There's a chat. Your chat is your direct link to ask Andrew and Samuel questions. Use it, abuse it, ask questions you have. They'll see it, so they can kind of like in flow respond to questions. You don't have to wait to the very end. So please start off by let us know where you're coming from. Just say hi in the chat. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Samuel and Andrew to say hi, quick intro, and start this conversation.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, hi everyone. I am Samuel Bordenave. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at SWTCH. I've been in the company for the past 3 years, and I am currently in my newborn daughter's bedroom, that used to be my office, but it will soon become her full-time bedroom. And we are in New York City. Andrew, over to you.
Will your daughter be making an appearance?
She won't. She's at daycare.
Okay. Well, my name is Andrew Sachs. I am an owner at Harbor Park Garage in downtown Baltimore. It's a 1,300 space parking garage. I live in Los Angeles, and I am the president of Gateway Parking Services, and I talk a lot about EV charging. So for some reason, you guys have invited me to talk about EV charging. So let's talk. What are your questions?
Yeah. So just for a little bit of context for folks on the call, we thought that it would be interesting to approach the EV charging conversation with looking through the lens of one experience, a full experience of someone, as opposed to just us kind of talking about our company. Happy to give more information about SWTCH. We're an EV charging company, but more to the point, I think, Andrew, your experience is really relevant for a lot of people that might be thinking about adding EV charging to their facilities, or maybe already have some chargers and are thinking about expanding their facilities. So I'll start maybe just from the start. So you own a parking garage, and you have been owning it for a certain time, and you were very early on, I would say, in installing chargers about a decade ago. So just curious if you could tell me and us a bit more about what that experience was when like 10 years ago, you're like, okay, I'm going to put some chargers in my garage. Like, where did that come from, and how did that go?
Well, I like to think of my parking garage as my sandbox, right? Where I'm in charge. I can test new products, test new ideas before I, for example, share it with my clients, and or make recommendations or write about it in a magazine or anything like that. So living in Los Angeles, early adopters, right? And so I started seeing EVs around. And then one day I'm walking through the garage in downtown Baltimore, and we had a VIP customer, dedicated space right in front. And he had a Tesla. And they were, new and kind of cool and, all that stuff at the time. And so I said, hey, you want EV charging? Would that be useful for you? And he's like, nah, don't need it, right? I charge up at home. I have a full charge. Okay. And so I took that and said, but there's got to be a demand. And I thought about it, and I said, it was a loss leader. And there was one big player at the time, and it was ChargePoint. And I chose ChargePoint, which was expensive, because it was a marketing play. They had in the infotainment at the time with, Bolt, I think it was, and, the only EV cars that were available in the Maryland area and the vicinity was they had all of those drivers. and they would choose where to go based on their need to charge. And range wasn't that great at the time. Some of these cars were like, 85 miles. So if you're coming from DC to Baltimore, you probably need to charge. So I said, great. There was an incentive. The electrician said, there's an incentive, and it'll pay for more than half at the time. And I was like, great, let's install 2, see what happens. And they said, what do you want to charge? And I said, we'll give it away for free. I can get $28 a day in parking. And, I forget what the electricity was at the time, but, it was going to cost me $2, $3, $4 in electricity. So I'm like, that's a marketing, that's a loss leader. And we installed, 2 charging, I think it was 2 chargers, 4 cars, right? And then the next year we added some more with the incentive program again, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And at a certain point, I'm like, wait a second, we're getting utilization. If charger is down, we're getting complaints. And so I was like, well, let's think about charging. And I mean, charging people
Right.
for charging. This is a major problem, by the way, in the industry terminology.
I know we need to fix this.
Yeah, fix it. Any ideas, throw them into the chat. And then I was like, we started making money from it. Right. So before we added some more chargers, it was, let's see if we can monetize. So basically it was a one step at a time approach, and it was market-based. Right.
Yeah.
And, at the time there were a few parking garages would, they throw in like a cheap charging thing, and they just put it in the back near the electric room or whatever, and a sign inside the garage. And then they took it out a year later, and they put a sock over it because no one was using it. I'm like, yeah, no one knew about it. And so that was the marketplace at the time. And, so that was very much my thinking. And I got the people who drove EVs, small percentage of the overall audience, but I got them. And I got them for day parking at the regular rate, and it cost me almost nothing in terms of electricity at the time. So,
yeah, I think that's like a super interesting point, that when people think about installing EV chargers, they think that they're going to be able to make money with the drivers paying for the electricity, which of course they will. But can you talk a little bit about, what other kinds of revenues you actually were able to get through the installation of those chargers?
Yeah. So there's the arbitrage of electricity. You pay 10 cents, you sell it for 20 cents, or whatever it may be, and you can make some money that way. But the ROI is not there for that approach, except if you are a major network and you are putting in super fast chargers and charging a premium for that. But we're not talking about that. Switch doesn't do that, if I understand. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
We do, but that's not our specialty. But go ahead. Yeah.
And that's not what I care about, but if I have a client that needs it, we can talk. So the arbitrage of electricity is probably not how you're going to make money, or enough money to justify it. But when you think of it as an amenity, and an amenity we're in the beta phase, the early days of EV. And, things are changing fast. I'm convinced that we've hit the tipping point. And I'm actually working on a report that I'd hoped to have published before this, but I will have published in the next week, looking at, the EV market from an investment point of view. And the reason I chose an investment point of view is because if you look at like Fox News, or you look at, CNN, one's going to tell you that EV charging is a fad and it's done, and others going to say it's saving the planet and whatever, right? And you're not going to get a balanced perspective. And so I took a step back and said, okay, if I'm an investor, is this a good investment in general, and where is the opportunity, right? And so I've been working on that report. I've been doing some deep research using Gemini, which has been amazing, by the way, and to get the background material. And and to back up, we are in the beta phase of this experiment, this transition, and I believe that this transition will happen over the next 30 years, right? The average life of a car is like 11.5 years that people keep it, right? So it's going to take a long time, even if everyone wants to transition today. And, things are changing rapidly, so fast we hardly notice. Range is going up, charging speed is going up. Right? So
Right.
these are the things that change our needs, right? So if you're trying to make money just on arbitrage, ooh, it's tough. But if you're saying, look, there's an opportunity to think of EV charging as an amenity in a commercial parking garage, in an airport garage, in a multifamily, an office, wherever, there's opportunities. So for us, we at Harbor Park in Baltimore, it's about 50% transient, 50% office workers. So I was really thinking about getting into transients, and the office workers are like, even that Tesla driver was like, oh, by the way, can I use that? So I said, great. We have 3 levels of service. We have VIP. You pay for your own space. It's the most expensive. And, I said, if you pay for VIP and built it into our pricing, you have free charging up to a certain amount. You can't just, have your friends rotate through, but a high limit. If you are Prime, the next level down, you have discounted charging. So, we're covering our costs. And everyone else, then there's that you're paying the base price. And so we make money that way. So what happened was a couple of years ago, company, they had 50 parkers, and they went to our competitors first. I don't know why, but they went to our competitors first and they said, hey, we need dedicated EV charging for one company car. Can you do that? And they were like, nope, we don't have the technology to give you that. We're not going to buy a whole new EV charger. They came to us. I'm like, you want 2? We're happy to dedicate that to you. And by the way, we're using Switch. So you know what I mean? We can give you that account. And if someone parks in your space, use your account and go use the other charger, and we'll get that car out, right? So that we have that flexibility. So we then did a monthly contract for them, and we got 50 cars by giving them basically very cheap. Actually, we gave them free EV charging, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the ROI there, right? It's indirect, but it worked. We just had another company come and say, look, we need 5 dedicated chargers. Like, great,
Yeah.
where can we put them, right? So that's why. I just saw a question come up.
Yep. Yeah, maybe just to recap what you were saying, like I think the impact on monthly parkers is remarkable. It's really this idea that you're providing this amenity, and you're going to get customers that maybe would have gone somewhere else to come to your garage, and maybe you're going to get customers in your parking garage to actually get to a different tier, so you can upsell them thanks to this amenity.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's
And that's just so I've had clients,
right.
We're in a shopping mall, right? And I've done it. I am guilty, where I will pay more to charge when I don't need to charge because there's a space right up front, and I just don't have the time to deal with all the traffic in the shopping mall, so I'll pay more. At the same time, that shopping mall could say, look, we got a whole bunch of spaces in the back corner. So we will incentivize people to go there by charging less, making them pay less to park there, right? And so you have all these different ways, and you have to think creatively. You have to look at it. This is, as a parking consultant, right? You have to look at it and say, oh, that's my dog.
And maybe just to, oh, hi, how's it going? And just to, I think we had a question from Rob on the chat there, which was partially answered by my colleague Brandon. The question is, if I install charging, how do I make sure that the chargers are actually going to get used? Because I don't want to reserve a bunch of spaces for charging that doesn't happen.
So PlugShare, Google Business Profile, right? You can legitimately go in and create a separate profile, call it, say, Switch Charging, Harbor Park Garage, or whatever your location is called, right? So you can then do that, so you're getting the word out there. One of the things I specialize in as a consultant is digital marketing dedicated to parking, right? And you have to be marketing yourself in the digital world because that's how people are making their choices, whether it's EV charging, whether it's just where to park for an event or whatever it may be. So you need, you need to get the word out, and there are free ways to do it. And you have to look at your audience.
Yeah, it's not enough to just like install the chargers and then assume that like money is going to flow. Like you need to think about maybe redesigning some of your offering, and also going through these tools, which by the way, at Switch, we're able to help you all kind of get that visibility online.
Yeah.
I'm curious, one of the questions that
Well, I want to stop you for a second. Switch actually took care of getting us registered with PlugShare, right?
There you go. Yeah,
So
yeah.
To put that out there, whoever switched to that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, with the benefits of those 10 years that you've had with those chargers, like, and you started with one provider, and we don't want to tank the competition or anything like that. But can you tell us about some of the issues that you had, or some of the things that you encountered that you think that in hindsight you would have done things differently, or things to watch out for when designing an install?
So look, the market's changed, right? And when I did it, the chargers were like $5,000, right? They were much more expensive than they are today, and for the same, functionality, or equivalent functionality. There's more functionality today for less money, and we would have things like everything was built into one thing, and it was all about the mechanical equipment, the actual chargers, right? And everything else was secondary. So we had a complaint where someone had, I think it was a BMW, that when you plugged it in, it had to click or it wouldn't start charging. The car wouldn't start charging. The little 75-cent piece was broken. So we're like, oh, can we get a new piece? Can we fix that? And like, no, you got to buy a whole new charger. Like 75-cent piece broke, and I got to buy a $5,000 charger and then pay the electrician to come, and there's no incentive for that. Like, no, right? And what I discovered, and when I found Switch, was that it's now a software-driven economy, meaning that you can do load balancing, you can do a lot of other things. You can give me the ability to charge people different prices and give free charging to this person and charge this person, whatever rate, and dedicate this one charger. And we can control all of that from the software. And the actual charger, it's a piece of equipment, and you can rip it out, put in a new one, and was it $800 or $500 or $1,000, depending on what you choose and what you're getting, right? And that's critical, because that brings the cost down of keeping this going. And these are high touch pieces of equipment that people are using all day, every day, and you got to be able to maintain them. And it took us months to get that little equipment issue resolved, which meant that charger we had to take offline, because if people that had to click in couldn't use it, they were going to get into an issue. They were going to have a complaint. They're going to have to move. So it was very inconvenient. And so that,
I think the hardware has improved a lot over the past few years. Now there's like more options, and they're overall more affordable. The sticking point is still like the install cost, right? That can be expensive if you don't have that software piece to keep it down.
Yes. So that's a change.
Can you tell us a little bit, like, kind of looking forward? So you have, looking into the future, and currently you have chargers installed at your facility. Like, what are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of this this facility? Do you want to add more chargers? Are you looking at other other improvements to how you're running things there?
Yes. So adding more charges, I'd love to, but it's market-based, right? It drives me crazy when you have certain cities and municipalities that are like, you have to have 50%. No, like we're never going to be at a point where 50% of the cars in a commercial parking garage that has 1,300 spaces is going to need to plug in, right? We just aren't. Like I said, range is going up, charging times are going down. More and more people have the ability to charge at home or charge at work over many hours or so on. So in terms of adding more chargers, it's market based. And one of the things I like about Switch is like, great, how many you want to add? Get your electrician out, we'll take care of the rest. Great. But an issue I'm dealing with right now, not an issue, but what I'm working on right now is when you offer EV charging, you want to control your electrical cost. And you can lock, in most states at least, lock in like a long-term contract, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, at different prices. So I had electricity at 8 cents a kilowatt, and now I'm about to sign it for 10 cents, a kilowatt, right? So what I did is I shot a email over to my Switch representative and said, look, we need to rethink pricing. Because I want to, at the very least, make sure that I cover my losses.
The increase in cost, yeah.
Money, right? But I don't want to drive people away, because now a lot of parking garages offer EV charging, and if they see that it's cheaper across the street and it's substantial, that's going to make a difference. So, I'm actually waiting for our meeting next week to figure that out, right? And then it's an easy, great, okay, that's the rate we want to charge. Boom, go ahead, do it, done, right? So that's a significant upgrade that's happening in the industry right now.
Nice. Yeah, it's almost like a second step. Like now that there is some competition out there and drivers are a little bit more knowledgeable maybe around like where can they find the cheapest. It's like with a gas car, you're going to be looking for where you can get the gas for the cheapest. So now that you have this experience, can be okay. We're going to price things the right way, comparing what's around me.
And let's talk about pricing a little bit, right? So like miles per gallon, everybody, just about everybody in the world knows how to calculate in their head miles per gallon, because we've been doing that for, maybe 100 years or whatever it is, right? But imagine the first time someone said, what's the miles per gallon in your car? They'd be like, what are you talking about, right? So the first time someone said to me, like, price per kilowatt, I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I've never thought in terms of kilowatts before, right?
Yeah.
So, when I originally did getting people to pay for parking at Harbor Park, I was like, screw it, we'll just do it by hour, right? To make it easy for them. And then, of course, we had a monthly parking group, which we also got in part because they wanted some charging. It was an engineering firm. Well, the engineers figured that stuff out really fast, right? So change. But in general, not everyone thinks like an engineer. So you have to, price accordingly and understand that driving an EV is just like driving a car, but everything's just a little bit different, which makes it very difficult the first time you drive. It makes it very difficult before you buy an EV. People are buying hybrids like crazy. It was like, oh, the EVs aren't quite ready yet, right? Or I drove one and I didn't know how it worked, or, they're ready, right? The market is there, and there's some astounding cars being built right now at all different price points. So the market is there, but it doesn't mean the uptake is fully there yet. And
right. It's a little bit like, you're saying that everything's a little bit different, makes things more complicated. But I would say on the flip side, if you're able to provide that amenity and like reliable charging, then you're going to get some really grateful customers and
Yes, 'cause
loyal
you can make
customers that are
their
going to come back.
life a bit easier, right? So more
Yeah.
and more people are buying EVs. The rate of the uptake is slowing, but they're still buying them, at a pretty astounding rate, right? But it's, you hear in the news like, oh, EV sales are slowing down. Yes, the rate of people buying, like we got past the initial early adopters, but they're buying at a healthy percentage, right?
Yeah.
And but it's different in Missouri than maybe it is in Maryland, and you got to look at your audience, and do not even talk to Switch or anyone else until if you haven't driven an EV. If you're talking about installing EV chargers in your garage, in your commercial property, in your airport, in your building, whatever, don't even, the first thing you have to do is drive one, rent one for a couple of days. So you have to, right? And then you'll begin to, oh, right. So most people charge at home, right? But people want to be able to charge at work. Okay, got it. And then like you start to understand how it works. So now you understand where to put it, right? And also, sorry, there's another question that you can answer more than me. But once you understand it, now you can think about how to set it up for your customers, right?
For sure. Yeah.
One thing is, people want to charge at work. Great. They're going to be there 8 hours. We got to get them back to the office and so on. So I've had clients where I'm like, you got a lot of EVs in your parking lot and plug-ins in your parking lot. What do you think about, and you have solar. So what do you think about giving free charging to your employees? Well, why would I do that? Well, think about it. You're giving them a raise, but there are no taxes or anything associated with it. You're giving them a reason to want to get to work early because they want to make sure they get there to plug in. And you are giving them a reason never to leave. Because if they're, I was talking to one employee, and I'm like, he travels a long distance. He comes in very early and leaves early, right? Because he wants to get around traffic. I'm like, if there were free charging, would you? And he said, I would buy an EV in a second. I get the HOV lane, and I'm spending $400 or more a month in gas. So if you got free charging, that's a $400 a month raise for that one person at the cost of the electricity, right? And
it's you're oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, he's never leaving, right? They'll have trouble firing him if they need to, because whoever else is going to hire him has to pay him $400 more before taxes and all of that, right? And that all adds up. So
it's an interesting point around like how if you put a charger in your facility, then you might actually, you're going to see people that didn't have an EV like now have EVs, and this is something that we're seeing in commercial parking garages, also in residential parking garages, like in your multifamily building. Like you put one charger, everyone's going to be like, amazing, now there's EV charging in my building, so I'm going to get an EV. I just want to address Nikhil's question, which I thought was quite interesting. And by the way, I guess you'll have been putting questions, which is great. Feel free to continue to do so. We have a little bit more time still. So if you have any questions that you want to ask us, please put that in the chat. So Nikhil's question is, are there any dynamic pricing solutions and adaptive user engagement offerings which could be personalized or optimized? And yes, the answer to that is yes. I'm kind of just provide our example, but other providers also have other offerings. So whenever we install a charger with a customer, we work with them to set pricing, and we can do different pricing rules. So at different times of the day, if the electricity that you're paying, for instance, is more expensive at a certain time of the day, you can set a higher rate, and you can modify that. And then you can go even beyond that. You have some services out there, some companies that are focused on doing like real-time adaptive pricing. So this is more geared towards, I would say, like high utilization stations, like kind of highway corridor stations where you might want the price to change at all times. But you have some companies that offer these services. The company called Stable is one of them. So I think you have to balance the idea of like maximizing the return that you're getting on your pricing and not wanting to sort of piss off your customers if
And don't
every
confuse.
day is a different price.
Right. Like I was one of the first to sign up for dynamic pricing. I think when it's marketing at the time, was the first in parking to begin to utilize that. And he called me up. I'm like, yeah, let's try it. What the hell, right? And I still use it, right? And I'm not sure if you said, hey, let's do dynamic pricing in Harbor Park Garage, I would do it. Because when I book parking, I know what the published rate is. It's $28 a day. But I got a deal today. I got it for $15 or whatever it may be. Awesome, right? So I know I got a deal. And I know what the price is before I get there. If it's EV charging, I don't know how many kilowatts I'm going to get. So to have dynamic pricing means that, it's a little bit more per kilowatt, but oh shoot, that was $20 more, right? Or I only saved 15 cents. Like, what I mean? It's much more complicated for the user in a day in, day out parking garage. Again, different from the highway corridor kind of thing.
So just I'm curious, like, so we've talked about your experience, like you kind of starting from scratch,
Right.
looking through different providers. Now you're at the state where you're pretty knowledgeable about the stuff. But for a lot of people, it's like kind of maybe they're looking through their first installation. So for someone that would be like kind of new to that, maybe a facility owner or parking operator, what would be your advice as to like some of the first things that they should look into if they're interested in adding chargers?
A couple things. One, as I already said, drive an EV, not just like for one little trip in your friend's car, but for a couple of days.
Just the product, yeah.
Understand how it's different, right? Understand what it feels like to drive into a parking garage to figure out if they have charging or not, and all that stuff, right? And how you would find your charging and what it means between level 2 and DC fast, and all of these things. It becomes quick and easy. But again, if you're driving a gas car for the first time, like, how do you fill up at a gas station? Like, we know it because, our parents were doing it and our grandparents were doing it, right? This is still relatively new. So that's number one. 2, look at your incentives. So I just had a client that, I called up SWTCH actually and came out and we did the whole report, and it was in Pasadena, California. And Pasadena has this great program, $6,000 to cover the cost of the product and the cost of installation per charger. And so we were preparing to take advantage of that. And by the time we got the report done, the client looked at it and the client responded, all the money was gone. And so we're waiting now until July to see A, if they're going to renew the program, and B, if they're going to, if there will be funding, right? So once act. And then, so this is an interesting thing came up. In California, they have what they call Cal Green. And Cal Green basically says if you're doing a new project, a new facility, 10%, that's still a very high percentage. And I'm 100% pro EV. I think that's a high percentage. But 10% of your parking spaces need to be EV. So if you have, 300 parking spaces, you know what I mean? You need 30 EV chargers. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't, So this was a one-time opportunity. You can't go back and add more later with that Pasadena program. And, so there became a calculation of, do we prepare them for any future work they may do to give more EV charging than maybe they need right now, but get that installed because the government's going to pay for it via this incentive, right? And so you got to look carefully at your customer base and what their need is. You have to think about, where am I going to put this? And, are they going to use it in those locations? How am I going to monetize? And what do my customers want, right? And every parking facility is unique and different and has different demands. So there's no one size fits all approach, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's helpful to have software solution that can handle what you're describing. It's like providing free chargers for some, and being able to have like differentiated pricing, for instance.
And I want to
Obviously,
answer Bob's question. Yes, that's exactly what I asked them to do. I am a data person, but I'm also busy, right? So I'm like, look, and also another thing I forgot to mention, but I mentioned it earlier, is lock in your pricing. Figure out what the best pricing is. And I'll give you a little hint. What I did is I said, here are my pricing opportunities. And I put it into Gemini, did deep research and said, it was in Baltimore, look at the Baltimore market for electricity. Where do you predict it's going to go in the next 5 years? And what's the best pricing model for me? And by the way, here's all of my utility that I downloaded from Switch, right? And so on, right? And I got back like this 30-page report that told me which plan to lock in for 3 years. I think it was 48 months actually. And, at what price and why that was the best one and where it looks like that market's going. I'm not saying it's 100%. The market could go way down. I could lose, but, be informed. So yes, and then go, look, here's what I'm paying. What's the market? Switch did it for me when we first switched to Switch, and they're doing it again for me right now. Right. That's one of the reasons why I chose Switch.
awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see. We had one last question from Nikhil, which I think our colleague Brendan, who's on the call, responded. So yeah, any additional questions from the chat?
If you want, oh wait, there's a new message.
Andrew, yeah, I was going to ask you
so
any last insights that you want to impart on the group.
I wrote an article a long time ago saying that the parking garage can be the gas station of the future. And in that article, I started to think about like how different sectors can use it differently, right? So I'm a commercial parking garage owner, and like I said, I built it into my monthly parking strategies, and also with my transient parking strategies. Multifamily is very different, and this is what I love, right? So you can put in, a few EV chargers in the back corner of the parking lot, and first come, first serve, and you got to move your car, and overcharges are all that. And then you can also say, hey, you know what? I will give any tenant, a dedicated space with dedicated EV charging with all you can eat up to a fair amount of juice for an extra $200 a month, say, right? And the tenant can go, oh, okay, I'm paying $400 a month in gas. So let me get an EV and then get a dedicated parking space. So I get better service. I get all my gas paid for. So I'm saving $200 a month in my made up example, right? And the landlord is now getting $200 a month more in rent, less the cost of the electricity. I'll say like $20 or whatever it is, right? So don't use my math, but do your own math. And that's a situation where multifamily can use it very differently than office. Or if I had airport parking, what I would do is I take the closest spaces to the bus or whatever, and I would make them big spaces. I'd paint them all a bright color. I put in switch charging, and anyone that parks there, if it's $10 a day, anyone parks there pays $18 a day, and they can plug in and or not in the EV, the charging's included, right? And what that does is it's just one more amenity that allows you to charge a maximum for that space. And guess what? The guy driving the big suburban SUV who's just in a hurry, who wants a space in front, will pay for that. He's not even going to charge, right? As opposed to no EV only, right? So you can slice and dice it any way you want if you walk or drive in your customer's shoes. Think about it from the way the customers do it. And what's great about Switch, what's great about that transition from 10 years ago is it's all software based. The hardware is relatively immaterial. I'm not saying it's, by comparison. And the software can do it. And a company like Switch can help you do that so you don't have to become a programmer. So
great. Well, I think those are
but I felt like saying it, so I said it.
Those are maybe the perfect words to end on. Like, make sure that, there's so many different parking use cases that you can't assume that what's working for one specific facility is going to work for the other. And then you really have to have a crawl, walk, run approach where testing a few things, understanding what your customer needs, and then you can iterate on that with new types of revenues and business models.
Right. And one of the great things, for example, about Switch is, I've worked with you guys in different markets in different cities, right? And you have different representatives who, they've all been great. And they know and understand all of the rebates and what's available and can help you design the smartest package based on just navigating that, what can be complex infrastructure.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we're nearing the end. I see Greg's coming back.
Yeah, that was great. Awesome conversation. Really appreciate the depth. Yeah. Thanks for those good questions on the chat. But as we're heading up to the end of time, wanted to just take this moment to thank everyone who's joined us. Thanks, Sam and Andrew, for the conversation. We will be getting this video out to those people who attended and those who couldn't make it, as well as you'll see this throughout social and whatnot.
I want to say one more thing. Sign up for the EV report. It's a daily email. And it's in that, you get lots of different information. Like I learned about Switch just raised a bunch of money, which means you guys are going to be around and probably paid for a good long time, right? So it's a great way of just keeping track of things that are happening.
Love it. Great idea. Great idea. Well, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for being part of it. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Thank you, Andrew.